A Place Called Home by Laurie Wick. Chapter 18. You haven't stopped smiling since you got back. Silas's voice broke through Luke's concentration. Luke didn't bother to deny it. His grin just widened, and his eyes once again swept over the acres he called home. The same acres, in fact, that his father, Joseph Cameron Sr., called home, as well as his mother's father, Charles Langley, before him. Supper over and the dishes done, Luke and Silas were settled on the back porch. The silence they shared was comfortable, each letting the peace and serenity of the evening settle around him. Sunday mornings brought extra work, with Grandma M's chores to be done as well as all their own stock to feed, so Saturday evening was usually spent relaxing and then retiring to bed early. Luke broke the silence with a question that told Silas what had been on his mind. "Si, has Christine been going to church with you and Gram?" "Yes." Luke merely nodded and left Silas to ponder on what had brought this up. He would have been surprised if he had been able to read Luke's mind, since his question had been nothing more than a passing thought, not centered on Christine, but on going to church and the day he had attended services with Caroline. Luke remembered a time in his life when, in his teen years, church had not been one of his favorite places. Caroline, he had to admit, seemed more interested in him than in the sermon. He couldn't help but feel a bit flattered, until he remembered how easily the minister had made it to think of anything besides the sermon. He was still praying about writing her, his heart still very unsure of his feelings for her. He also prayed he would not feel desperate, that his wanting a wife so badly wouldn't cloud his mind and make him forget that God's will was more important than his own. Once again, as Luke surrendered his will to God's a peace settled over his troubled heart. He knew without a doubt that if God had a wife for him, and he left the choosing in his hands, everything would be perfect. In town, Grandma M and Christine were also finished with supper. Settled in the parlor, Christine picked up some mending, and Grandma M chose a book. Grandma M had held her tongue all evening, even though she could tell something was bothering Christine. After pretending to read for a full 5 minutes, she gave up and plunged in. "Christine, you seem a bit quiet this evening. I hope you're not coming down with something." "No, Grandma M, I'm fine." They both knew this wasn't true. Grandma M plunged in again, praying she wasn't being too pushy. "Was the letter you received today from home?" "Yes." Grandma M watched an expression she couldn't quite define pass over Christine's face. "Would you like to talk about it?" Grandma M was surprised when Christine didn't even hesitate. "It's rather complicated, Grandma M. You see, I didn't leave Spooner under the best of circumstances. Being here, working and getting drawn into your family a little more each week sometimes causes me to forget that there are things at home that need to be settled." Christine paused here, and the emotion on her face became clear to Emily. Fear. Christine searched Grandma M's face intently before continuing hesitantly. "The woman who wrote me, a woman I trust, advised me to stay here for the time being. And, well, we've never discussed how long you need me. If this is a temporary arrangement, or..." Her voice trailed off. Grandma M's eyes flooded with tears. When she could speak, her voice was very soft. "Were it in my power, Christine, I would keep you here with me for the rest of my life." Christine flew into the arms of the older woman. Christine clung to Emily as great sobs racked her young body, and Emily's own tears ran silently down her cheeks. Christine's tears seemed to exhaust her, and so with a final hug for Grandma M and a hoarse "thank you," she took the stairs to bed. Once in bed, exhausted as she was, Christine could not keep her mind off the letter from Mrs. Hall. Even as sleep claimed her, snatches of the letter returned. "Carl Maxwell is missing. Talk to no one. The sheriff is looking into things. Stay where you are. I repeat, talk to no one." "You mean to tell me you've been gone all this time only to return and tell me the job isn't done? How long does it take to kill one woman?" Vince Jeffers' face was mottled with rage. The veins in his neck stood out like cords. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jeffers, sir, but no one has seen a girl of that description, and the only Mr. Franklin in town, somebody said, was killed by a runaway horse a few weeks back." Vince Jeffers was so angry he wanted to strike the man. He stood behind the desk, a heavy glass paperweight clenched in his hand. Finally, he spoke through gritted teeth. "Get out! I need time to think, and don't you dare show your face around me until I send for you." The man needed no further prodding. He bolted for the door, nearly frightened out of his wits by his employer's rage. The sound of shattering glass echoed in his ears as he made good his escape.